introduction. And let's start. John Weddleton, Bill Evans,
Steve Peterson, Tim Steele,
Dave Otto.
Sharon Scott.
and in our audience, please.
Tom McGrath.
Steve Ashburn, Department of Health and Human Services.
Melinda Freeman, DHHS.
Rosella Young, Office of Assembly Council. Caitlin Taylor, Anchorage Community Manager.
Ronald Lehman, property owner, candidate for District 4 for the Assembly.
Eric Glad, American Civil Liberties Union of Alaska.
Lisa Caldera, Transition. Dana Larson, President. Jane Straight, United Way. Barbara United Way.
Dave Barabee, Human Services.
Kim Coble, Beans Cafe.
Chris Constant, work at Aquila and Fairview Community Council Business Association and candidate for Assembly.
Miranda Strong, I'm representing the Campbell Park Community Council's Homelessness Committee. Craig Howard, HSC.
Jonas Herndon, Project Director at Arbor.
Marcy Sheriff, again, Housing Authority.
Susan Musante, Division of State Division of Behavioral Health.
Beth Holden, Behavioral Health.
Zach Burgess, Institute of Community Lands.
Monica Stater, Juanita Ventures. Christina, Ventures.
Carlotta Mack, Permanent House. Joy Candy, Rites of Passage, Covenant House, Alaska. Fiona Johnson, Clifford Center.
Great, thank you all for being here on this rather snowy Wednesday. Looks like we haven't resolved our technical issues yet, but do we want to wait for a few minutes, or what would you prefer?
We could, I know one of our presenters brought a handout to look at, so we could change the HUD youth grants and have them go first. I'm ready. Old school with a hard copy.
It speaks favor.
So why don't we do that and let you work out the technical issues? And apparently due to the weather, the pizza is also delayed, but it's reported that it'll be here, so we have that to look forward to. So who are we turning it over to?
Carlotta Mack from Covenant House. Maybe I'll just do a word of introduction. Covenant House has been our main partner in youth homelessness historically, and going forward, they will be building the coalition of entities that will be participating in our efforts to end homelessness in the community. And they were just awarded a HUD grant that's built off of this community collaboration that's been going on, United Way, the Homeless Coalition, and the Mayor's Office. So this is our latest award announcement from HUD, this grant focusing on youth homelessness.
So good morning. As Nancy said, my name is Carlotta Mack, and I am currently serving as the interim executive director as our amazing leader, Allison Kerr, just received the Rasmussen Award for sabbatical. So as we are here, she's driving down the coast towards Texas. So can everyone hear me okay? Great. There are some extra copies if you would like to follow along. I'm really excited to be here today to talk to you about the HUD Youth Demonstration Grant. I will just let you know which slide I'm on. So I'm going to start with the second slide, which is primary objectives. And I also provided with you a copy of the press release that HUD sent out last month announcing the award. So Anchorage was selected of one of 10 communities across our country to receive this award. And today my goal is to really emphasize what this means for us. Last year they announced that they were going to award up to $33 million within various communities across the country to end youth homelessness. And the goal was to build national momentum. And I really want to emphasize that this is a demonstration grant. It's a 2-year demonstration grant with the goal of identifying what our community gaps are around youth homelessness and identifying projects that will be evaluated during those 2 years. At the end of the 2 years, we do have the option to fold those projects into our continuum of care. So this is a phenomenal opportunity for us as a community to come together, identify what our gaps are, develop a community plan to end youth homelessness. It offers the opportunity to expand capacity, so therefore There is no intention for HUD for us to fund existing projects. They're asking us to be creative, they're asking us to be innovative, to think outside the box on finding solutions to solve this problem for youth. What we get as a result of that is technical assistance from HUD. So we'll have up to 6 months. It'll allow us the opportunity to look at best practices, but once again, for us as a community to decide what's best for our young people. Next slide. As you will see in the press release, it does list the 10 communities. Alaska was selected as a rural community. This was a pretty huge accomplishment for us because it allowed us to be recognized outside of larger cities. One of the things that we did have to do is that the Anchorage Coalition is our partner, and they were the applicants for the project. Covenant House is the lead organization. What's required of us is to have a youth advisory board and to make sure that we're engaging child welfare, the Office of Children's Services, as well as the Division of Juvenile Justice. And also our partners. One of the things that I think it's important to recognize why Anchorage was selected was because of our ability to come together and have our partnerships. Prior to us submitting the application, we did a 2-day workshop with about 40 different local youth providers who came together and put together a blueprint of what we identified as the initial gaps for youth to address youth homelessness. And we were able to submit that along with those 40 same partners, including our federal and local delegations, sign the MOA to demonstrate that we do have the partnerships within our community to deliver this project. It's also going to allow us to streamline our processes. One of the things that we have done, which I'm sure you've heard about, we'll continue to hear about, is our coordinated entry system. So on January 1st, we went live with the youth portion of the coordinated entry system, and that was a requirement of this demonstration project. The next page is about the Youth Advisory Board. And this really is the thing that I really want to highlight because I think it's something that's very unique, and I'm really excited that HUD took this direction. HUD is requiring that we have a Youth Advisory Board, and one of the things that one of our staff said was that no services or programs for youth without them. So this Youth Advisory Board plays a critical part in this project. No project can be approved or will be funded by HUD if the Youth Advisory Board does not sign off on it. So I do want to introduce one of our youth, Jo Tandy. She's a current resident at Covenant House, and she will be a part of our Youth Advisory Board. This is probably going to be one of the most challenging aspects of this project, because as talking to some of my colleagues, oftentimes creating the Youth Advisory Board, it can work or it can't work, and our goal is to make it work. We've reached out to the commission. We've also reached out to United Way, who has their youth task force, and we're looking to partner to create a cohesive youth advisory board that involves the youth who've had these experiences and who can really speak to what they believe will work for them through this project. So Jo is here today to listen, but you will be hearing from the youth as we go on through this project. Our next page is the type of interventions that can be funded through this project. HUD does emphasize housing, but one of the things through our workshops as well as talking to our partners is that supportive services is very important. So we're going to be looking at what housing can look like for young people, but also what supportive services that we need to support them in those housing units. So one of the things I've learned working with young people is that when they leave us, that's the one thing that oftentimes scares them the most. So how can we create those support systems that continue to support them when they're living independently? And one of the things that we did as part of our workshops is that we created an impact statement, and that impact statement is on your next page. And our impact statement is our community is committed to ensuring every transition-age youth has a safe place to live and the supports necessary to thrive. That is what's going to be our focus and our priority as we build our community plan. As I said earlier, one of the most important things is partnerships, and we had 40 youth providers initially who joined us as part of our workshops, and we will continue to engage those partners. The Office of Children's Services, the Division of Juvenile Justice, is critical to this. They're asking us to look at all aspects of youth services. And really trying to identify what those gaps are that are leading youth into homelessness and what we can do to transition them out of homelessness. So what is it funding? It's going to fund our community plan. And our community plan is something that we will be coming together to you, as well as to all of our partners to develop. When we did our workshops, we did put together a blueprint, and that blueprint was a good foundation for us to start. We identified gaps, and one of the biggest gaps that we identified and want to prioritize is the most vulnerable of youth. The youth that are having a hard time finding treatment services, finding housing services. And so as we build our community plan and identify what those projects are going to be, it's going to be centered around the most vulnerable of youth. Ages 18 to 24, also a youth under the age of 18.
Carlotta, Mr. Trini has a question.
Oh, sure.
Okay, how do the feds define transition age youth?
Sure. It is under, they define under service population of youth under the age of 24.
To where? Do we start at 12, 14, 18?
This project starts at 14.
14 to 24?
Mhm. And just to emphasize, they're asking us to be innovative and creative and to think outside the box. And our community plan process, when we initially started the application process, our understanding was we would start the community planning in April. They've asked us to start now. So Anchorage was awarded $1.5 million over 2 years. And so now we can actually request 30% up front to start planning. And that can include research, that can include going and looking at some best practices. Our goal is to try to create a budget that doesn't take away from the overall amount, because if we take the 30%, that takes what we can give to projects. So we are trying to create a streamlined budget as much as possible. And we do have some partners that are willing to come to the table to help us do that. I'm probably a little bit ahead of myself, but sorry. So just some of the priorities that HUD has asked us to look at. And there are 4 outcome areas that they're asking us to prioritize, and that's stable housing, that's number 1, permanent connections, education and employment, and social and emotional well-being. That doesn't mean that this funding necessarily needs to will pay for that, but what that means is that they're asking us to incorporate that. So that goes back to HUD's priorities housing, but supportive services are really important, and to be creative in what that looks like, and what other funding opportunities are we able to access to support that. There are special populations that they're asking us to look at: LGBTQ, pregnant parenting, DJJ, Office of Children's Services, minors, and youth and trafficking, with an emphasis on positive youth development, family engagement, and immediate access to housing. There's a page in your packet that is called Opening Doors, and this really just gives you a map of what they're asking us to look like. It's the Opening Doors Federal Strategic Plan to End Homelessness, and it's what we're using as our, flow chart or map when we're looking at the community plan as well as the projects that we will be creating. So in addition to our funding, we will have a dedicated team of technical assistant providers, and the other exciting aspect of this is that there will be an evaluation. So there will be an evaluation team that will be creating a process to look at our project to determine its impact, and with the ultimate goal of being able to be duplicated in other communities. I think this is a phenomenal opportunity for Anchorage to really show how our partnerships have been effective in bringing people together, and how this will allow us to identify a project that we know can be duplicated elsewhere. If it can be duplicated in Anchorage, I think it can be duplicated anywhere else. And then the last page just gives you a timeline of where we're at today. So right now our priority is bringing people together and then starting on our community plan. And that community plan does have to be completed and turned into HUD by July of 2017. Any questions?
Mr. Wilson.
What's Covenant Services, just overall budget in dollars?
Just ours alone, it's about $6.2 million.
So this is a huge percentage.
Yeah, so this particular pot of money doesn't necessarily all go to Covenant House. So we are the lead organization, but the idea is to work with the community to identify projects so they can actually apply for some of that funding as well. It's going to look very similar to our continuum of care process. So organizations can apply for projects based on our community plan. And Covenant House does have the option as well to apply for funding.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Carlotta? I don't see any. Thank you for the presentation, and thank you to all those who were responsible for getting us the grant.
Thank you.
Mr. Steele.
Yeah, I just think it's a great opportunity, and I agree with you. It's something, it's a good, for Anchorage to showcase what we have and how we deal with it, and plus to help solve problems. So, good job.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I think this is an excellent opportunity. Aquila House has been underutilized. I mean, they had more capacity than what they've been using because they didn't have the budget. So with another $1.5 million, they will be able to actually use that facility to its maximum capacity.
Okay. Forrest, you on phone?
I'm gonna call downstairs.
Okay. Where do we go next?
Since we're a little off of order now, would it be acceptable if maybe we can have a review of our other HUD grant for adults, the Pay for Success project, and then we can put it in context for the work that's going on around organizing the community?
That makes sense.
Okay. Dave D'Amato and Sharon Scott are with us today with United Way, and Dave Myokiley is the other part of our three-part stool here, but he's been pulled off to help in responding to the fire that happened this morning. So he's not able to join us, but Dave and Sharon are going to provide this next segment, which is the adult HUD grant that we've been awarded, our Pay for Success. And Sharon Scott has been recently hired by United Way and is dedicated full-time to this project.
Thank you for having me today. It's a pleasure to be with United Way and to work with the municipality on this exciting project. The Pay for Success model grant through HUD is a $1.3 million 5-year grant. The idea of it is to involve front-end social investors through social innovation funds and bonds, and work with an intermediary. You have a graphic in front of you that kind of lays out how it's mapped. United Way is serving in partnership with the municipality and the coalition in this process. We are engaged right now in the feasibility study, and it involves both the municipality and the Matsu Borough. Both communities were written into it, about 400,000 people. We anticipate impacting at least 100 individuals that meet the definition of chronically homeless, that are high utilizers of crisis services, and that have a pattern of recidivism. And the feasibility phase of this project, which we just started, it is about 13% of the funding awarded by HUD, and we have about 9 months in order to do that. Right now, we're at the point where we are engaging the community partners, which is the providers and the continuum of care, which Christy and Monica are involved with, the municipality and United Way. When we get through the feasibility phase, if we deem that this is a feasible program for the community, then we enter into transaction structuring, which is creating an opportunity for contracts to be drafted and how payments will be processed. 29% of the funding of the $1.3 million is for this phase, and then we move into actual implementation. And the nice thing about this HUD grant is that there is $250,000 or about 20% of the grant that will actually make the success payments back to the providers as we're working out all the steps over the 5-year period of time. And the end result is that we will have at least 100 people in permanent supportive housing, both in Anchorage and in the Matsu. We anticipate about 75% of them being in Anchorage and about 25% of them being in the Matsu. And I came to United Way from the Matsu Health Foundation, so I know the Valley fairly well, and it gives us an opportunity to really hit the ground running with this. And so I'm excited to be on this project.
How long do you anticipate feasibility space left?
The feasibility is a maximum of 9 months, but I'm aiming for 6. So we anticipate having a feasibility study wrapped up sometime in July.
And we just had one example of a community that finished their feasibility analysis. We can circulate that to the committee if you're interested, to see what they included in theirs. It's pretty exciting because it made it so like we're okay. We're good.
And a second community that's already gone through this process has demonstrated a 50% savings, particularly in crisis services. And so it's pretty exciting, the prospect of what this could do for both communities.
I think it's Austin.
It is awesome.
Okay.
Any
So-
further on that? Any questions regarding that grant?
Okay, so those are some of the new drivers that are coming about both because of our collaboration and fueling it to continue forward. So maybe if we jump back to the top of the agenda now, we can go through the municipalities portion, and then Dave D'Amato, I think, can cover both the coalition and the rest of the United Way piece. Sure. Okay. Rumor has it it's Dave D'Amato's birthday today, so.
Oh, wow.
Probably it'll be a really exciting update then. So just as a reminder, this is the visual of the formula that the mayor used. Over the top blue bar that's depicted in this visual is that backbone or that collaboration, which is gaining the confidence of funders. And I did hear this from a consultant recently, that people feel that, funders feel, that Anchorage is implementing structures that are not only part of requirements for specific grants, but really aiming to do something in the community and having some success. So that would explain the recent influx of grants. I think it reflects the fact that there's some confidence that we're really leveraging all that we have in the community and moving forward. So if you look below that umbrella organization that's monitoring these three areas, there's the program focus, which we spoke about on the left side, with the specific population areas that each have their own very important approach. You know, the youth approach is different than families and is different than some of our reentry and adult populations. So those programmatic updates are the work of different committees and collaborations underneath our overarching umbrella. And then in the middle column, you'll see in this next work, our attention from the mayor's office and United Way, the partnership will start looking at community infrastructure, housing units, and really solidifying the infrastructure that is this coordinated entry HMIS database system and the collaboration and leveraging of our providers. And the final column is the one that Sharon and to some extent Carletta addressed, with the HUD having an ongoing component that becomes part of the sustainability of this initiative. We don't want to just make changes and then not be able to continue them throughout time in Anchorage. We want these to be permanent solutions. The next, I've added this middle box to the sustainability because connection to workforce training for our participants is vital and needs to happen right in the mix of people, us identifying people, helping them get settled in housing, and then connected to a way to stay there. That's a tremendous piece of our sustainability. And then the last one is our community engagement and communication about what's happening. There is a tremendous amount happening, and I think there's definitely work to be done here in communicating that back out to Anchorage. So progress to date, as of January 17, we have counted with the collaboration, the resources added into the community, through the mayor acting as a catalyst for all of this work happening. There's been 180 people that have been housed. The first 12 months we saw about 96 people, and that was primarily pulling together resources to help state programs become more effective. So we had the Assertive Community Treatment Team, the Intensive Case Management Project, and some of the mental health programs. This initiative helped solidify and organize that work so that they would be more effective. And then we saw the $2 million of funding from Providence. We've seen another small grant from the Trust in addition to the funding for my position. The Trust has supported our cold weather shelter activities so that we can keep those providers going through April. and then the 2 grants that we've reviewed so far. The way that we are checking and we're verifying that this is working is some of our policy outcomes include our efforts to engage people in camps around the street and move them to locations where we can get them on the list, we can get engagement, and practically, in a practical sense, we can find them again. Engagement in a camp is something that takes a tremendous amount of time, not only for developing a relationship, but sometimes practically you can't find that person again. So our efforts to really solidify how the data was counted, we've now done 2 winter counts with the same methodology of breaking the community into quadrants, or defined areas, identifying enough volunteers to go out and do a very thorough canvass of those areas, doing that count at a time when we know we're hitting people who are in those locations, and then having this count at the end. This point in time count has been reviewed and is we're still checking a few data points to make sure we didn't duplicate anybody in our 2017 outreach count. But you can see from 16 to 17, we've made tremendous progress in moving people from camp to locations where we can get them on the list and help move them toward housing. What's significant also is that drop in the number of people that are young and who are out of doors. They're so vulnerable and they are top priorities. So we were really pleased, even though the numbers are not really huge, that shift from 17 to 11 is significant for us. We've also engaged new strategies around this policy initiative to move people from camps and to locations with the APD. The CAP team, we're adding the social services coordinator. We've pretty much got all the bugs worked out on that, and I believe that we're starting with that either this week or next week. There's the new camp reporting portal so that we can have more flow of information about where people are seen and how we can outreach to them. And then we're increasing the effectiveness of our outreach by having all of those providers. There's easily 20 people around the table each week. With Christy Duff is here, she's our systems manager for that effort. And all with the goal of, we know there are tensions when there are homeless people, they don't have anywhere to go, they're at a loss, the neighborhoods are at a loss because the perception is it makes neighborhoods less safe. So this whole effort to engage people and move them to housing is working. We've also learned over this is the first time in the community that I've been working in this area that we've been able to know exactly how many people there are. So this allows us to plan for spaces for overflow shelter rather than just seeing how it goes in the moment. So we've been able to add new overflow spaces to our system, including 20 at the Stoll, which we initiated that building last year when Beans Cafe was closed for a period of time. We've been able to increase the number of people at the downtown soup kitchen, and I see Sherry Laurie is here with us today. So up to 50 spaces for shelter guests and people participating in the bakery and restaurant program. And then Beans Cafe has added up to 75 spaces to their location as well. All based on the numbers, which the Brother Francis Shelter is reporting to us on a weekly basis, how many people showed up, how many people were we not able to accommodate, so that we want to eliminate that scenario where someone shows up for shelter and we can't shelter them. So then, one of the things that we'll do in the initiative now is move back to that middle column and begin looking. One of the things we've learned based on our assessment of people is that there are some people with very specific needs. There are a lot of elders in the system. There are people with mental illness who have a very hard time integrating into a shelter setting. There are people with brain injuries. So we begin looking for housing units and stabilization units that we can use to help someone who's having a very acute episode stabilize and be ready to transition into housing in the community. So we will begin examining, now that we have the numbers and looking at the VI stats, we can start planning for how many of those units that we'll need in this community. And that's also a first and very, very exciting for us. Just a reminder, this is the most recent. This is actually a little bit out of date now. We have more participants in the system, but this distribution of people in our system has been tracking as we add people in, that there's really this big bubble that's in the middle of the VI-SPDAC continuum, if we will. So there's a low, mid, and high-level needs group, and getting resources to this mid group is going to be one of the challenges that we look at in both the Youth Homeless Grant and in the HUD Pay for Success Grant, because if you think about where existing resources are that can help people move to housing, you see that this curve, the line on the right side of this bell curve is a little bit sharper downward as we get to the higher needs individuals, because that's where federal dollars flow. So we've been able to be effective with those dollars and get people to those units. But if you think about the rest of the community, we don't have any other rental assistance programs for people in Anchorage. And so where we see the biggest bubble of people, we have the fewest dollars pointing for rental subsidies. Other communities have used rapid rehousing models or time-limited rental assistance models that can help the person get the types of service they need, some episode of treatment or medical care, and then back to community living independence. And so there are models that we can begin looking at through these two new federal opportunities that allow us to change our system over time. So that is I'll leave this on this slide so that we can be thinking about where the different components of report get plugged in, but that's the report from how the mayor's office is approaching things and supporting our community partners. And I will, unless there are questions, I'll turn it over to Dave D'Amato.
Questions for Nancy on that piece? Just one quick question. Of the 180, how many of those would be considered scattered site housing?
The 180.
The 180 you said we've housed. Was it 180? How much of that is scattered site?
So we have relied fairly heavily on Sitka Place, which is the Rural Caps property, and that is about 50 units. We've plugged some of those folks into Carlick Manor, and then 325 rented up. So I would say it's fewer than 100 that are the single site properties. The rest of them are units around the community.
And I just wanted to make a comment on your importance of the sustainability aspect of this that you're highlighting. I was going through my office this past weekend, getting rid of all my assembly stuff. But yeah, one of the but in my pile for this committee, I had all of the old reports that have been done in Anchorage, dating back at least to the Fink administration on homelessness, and they're depressing in the sense that they were saying the exact same thing every 5 years when they did these reports, identifying the same problem, having basically what the ideas for solutions were, but there was never any continuation or follow-up or ability to make a difference. So I mean, the key is going to be you're making great progress if we can somehow sustain this beyond our particular tenures in this problem. That's really important.
It's one of the main reasons that we're driving this partnership as the head of our work, that United Way and the Homeless Coalition are here to stay, and some other things might change around them, but if we can root this work in our community partners, then it will last.
See any other questions or Tim?
Yeah, I have a little bit of concern about the bubble that you showed in terms of being able to drop that down a ways in terms of sustainability over time. As was just pointed out by our illustrious chair, we've been doing the same thing over and over and with the same results, and not really getting to something that's sustainable over time. So I agree that's a huge issue. What we ought to be shooting for.
See any other questions? Take it away.
So I think I would start my remarks by just talking to you a little bit about the emergency cold weather shelter plan, which Nancy incorporated into her slideshow for us here today. To your point, Chairman Steele and some of them, or Chairman Edmonds and some of them Steele, I think one of the most exciting parts about what we're working on today is that we are looking at a lot of the same problems, but some of the things that have come online just in the last 60 days are changing the ways in which we are doing things. So we're looking at the same problems, but we're actually applying a lot of innovation to those problems. Some of the innovation is very exciting to us and seems common sense when we think about it. Being able to count people and, as the mayor says, put them in a by name category. And it's connecting work and creating work in a system level way. One of the things that we were unable to do for the longest time in this homeless services was we weren't able to tease organizations apart. HUD and other funders, by necessity and by regulation, kind of stuck them together. But there's been this long, slow trend in the federal government over the past, 15, 20 years, where they've started to incorporate accountability, data, innovation, collaboration, system-based work, and they're foreshadowing now that as we move into the future, that those who are early adapters, those who show success in pay for success and social innovation bonds, these sorts of things, those will be the communities that get more resources to innovate more and more. And so we're really optimistic about both our Youth Demonstration Grant, we believe that can be super effective, and our Pay for Success Grant, because these social innovation bonds, they're getting woven into the fabric of federal law, not only in this demonstration project that we're working on, we were very lucky and grateful to get, but the 21st Century Cures Act just created a department-level agency that is looking at social innovation bonds across the spectrum of social need. And they're looking for us to blaze some trail here and be successful, and then once we do that, we'll be able to, the municipality of Anchorage will be able to apply for social innovation bonding and supports in other corridors that we work on, early education, people coming out of prisons, this sort of thing, all similar projects, but with new and innovative processes. So with that, I think I would just say I have to introduce myself today as the Anchorage Coalition to End Homelessness Interim Executive Director. There was such a great deal of innovative work that they were engaged in, and they're looking for just the right person. And so they have they've hired United Way, a collaboration between United Way and the coalition involved. The coalition taking me on as their interim executive director while they start a search in earnest for just a top flight executive director candidate. They're going to simultaneously hire a program manager who can help work on the COC, the Youth Demonstration Grant, some of the other grants that we're working on, the coordinated BHAP program that's going to be happening this year for the first time. And I'll just pause there to explain that a little bit. The BHAP is the Basic Homeless Assistance Program, and in the past, in the Anchorage area, those who receive basic homeless assistance funds have applied independently and received their funding straight from AHFC. Through some innovation at AHFC, they want the application to be coordinated from moving forward, and this is all part of that bigger trend that I was saying. This is going to be the first year that Anchorage makes that coordinated application, and that happened just last week. The agreement of all of the folks who are receiving those funds decided to let the coalition be the lead agency on that. It's, I'm not going to say it's just a ceremonial title this year, but what it is this year is it's sort of a trial balloon. There's not a whole lot of work required out of the coalition except really digging in and understanding how the Basic Homeless Assistance Program works and thinking about ways that we can work together moving forward. In addition to that, the work that's going on at the United Way, the coalition work. I'm sorry. Let me skip back. The coalition work that's being undertaken right now is a lot of this programmatic on the grounds. You'll hear people from different agencies telling you about activities that they're undertaking. They are changing, and they are putting in different solutions that I think are going to be effective for us moving forward. But the work of the United Way, which is the other bit that I want to tell you about today, we are really making strides in trying to forge some of those partnerships. And I mentioned before the emergency cold weather shelter plan. One of the things that we're seeking to do this year is have all of our emergency cold weather shelter providers meet us on May 1st and begin a process of stitching together all of those different agencies that do emergency cold weather shelter and being sort of the first line of really communicating across borders and really starting to share resources and share client data in ways that I don't think Anchorage has seen in the past. And so that will be some of the work that we're bringing on in May. I keep referencing the coordinated entry system and how that's innovative and how that's really changing. And our coordinated entry team, 3 members of the team are here right now, Christy, Monica, and Zach. And it would be, there's no way to really undersell how effective these guys have been so far. It came online in January, and they were able to incorporate, I think it was over 300 people very quickly. And then as quickly, they realized that there were duplications and errors, and they streamlined it down to a list of 200 actual individuals with good case files and well documented. And they are solving and surmounting problems on a daily basis. I found out that the team had undertaken a review process that they engineered themselves to fix the bad records that were in place, and so they were able to very quickly bring that up to speed. So I'd like Christy now to come and give the update on the rest of the HMIS and coordinated entry.
I'd say that Dave hit a lot of the notes on that. There's been a big effort to collect missing data or scrub the list of clients that had incomplete data, so we have a more accurate running list of clients that qualify for the coordinated entry program as mandated by HUD. Through Project Homeless Connect and the point in time count, there was a big effort with Monica, myself, Nancy, and other members from ICA going through and doing that data collection and data scrub. Through that, 163 people with incomplete data came off the list. We have 227 as of yesterday. And through that process, also identified a lot of clients that are housed maybe in projects outside of coordinated entry. One example would be someone who was on the list from last year's point in time count, but like Nancy said, sometimes you can't find people again. You have a hard time with follow-up. We identified they were housed in another program and were able to remove them from the list and verify that they are in housing. And through the weekly meetings, continue to go through and identify clients that meet programs like with mental health criteria or requirements. We can recommend them there according to the prioritization list. Veterans who qualify for VASH or tribal VASH vouchers, the SRA program, and a variety of them. Also on the family side, since the programs became fully implemented January 1st, there's 15 families that have been housed in coordinated entry, and there are another 67 on the list as of yesterday that are working through the process. And I think Monica's got the transitional coordinator and the actual boots on the ground talking to our single individual clients every day has more to probably add to that and what our efforts have been with direct services.
So it's still a work in progress. Again, we have 227 people on the list as of yesterday, and it's growing. So right now we're really trying to look at ways to start case conferencing some of these people who are higher up on the list but aren't qualifying for housing that's currently open. And so mental health vouchers are our most common vouchers right now, but some of the people at the top of our list may be a physical disability or substance abuse. And so finding a way to work with community providers and case managers to try to start catching those people so that we're actively working top down regardless of where those HUD dollars are exactly. I think that's going to be our next really big effort as we, especially kind of moving towards the end of the fiscal year and waiting for more money to come in July as these housing dollars get used up. What can we do to continue to be productive for our clients?
reminded me, back to the data. Last month, Assemblyman Flynn had a question about data collection, how it's reflected in HMIS that Zach showed us, various Excel spreadsheets and the reports that come out of that system. Based on that question, I developed a table of how many trainings have been offered, and I identify a group training as 3 participants or more. That there have been 15 trainings since November 21st to service providers, how to do the assessment packet correctly and according to regulatory guidelines, and how to enter that data into HMIS so we have accurate reporting points that we can speak to. And that's also been a big effort because we have a lot of really good providers out there doing this work, but if we're not consistent with how the data is collected and put into the system, then it's not useful for us, and we're really making that effort. So when we come and speak to you, you've got those numbers to reflect the efforts.
You've seen now the data that's found on the community website. I'm sure one of the exciting developments that also happened last week was that we got our first look at the data dashboard developed by Zach and his team, and it's now under review at the moment, and will be available, I'm thinking, in about a week. So next time we meet, I'm hoping that we'll be able to get a display as to what that looks like. The exciting thing is that as Nancy's data showed, as you can see on the Muni data, we've got everything trending in the right direction. And the data dashboard that they've developed shows us a lot of positive results as well. So keep your eyes peeled for that next time.
I know we're just getting on top of the list now, so this may be a premature question, but do you get any sense as to how dynamic or how fluid necessarily this list is? I mean, how frequently are people coming into that situation, and how good are we at working? I guess we're speeding up things on the back end, getting them off the list. But do we get a sense of in a given year, how many we're likely to see added on, falling into that situation, and how many we're going to be taking off? Is that?
I think Monica and Christy might be best situated to speak to that. Do we know yet?
Well, so one example would be after Project Homeless Connect and the point in time in the big data scrub, there were about 150 on the list. That's the end of January. As of yesterday, there's already 227 again. So it's a constant, it's a rolling number all the time. You could take 20 people off and house them, but if 50 more are assessed and qualify and are added to the list, your numbers are always fluid.
And I think too, the more we work as a community to all be using HMIS and to have that data shared. Again, we found people who were housed through Sitka Place or housed through other housing programs, and because HMIS used to be closed, from the list side of things, we couldn't see that people were housed and could be moving off. And so I think the more that we're able to share that data, we'll be able to track people, I think, a little bit more consistently on that front.
And then I think maybe also to get to part of your question, the sustainability column is if we see people coming back, if they've been housed, they're coming back, we'll be able to know that because of the data system. It'll show when somebody's returned, and we'll be able to run reports. So we probably too early to get to whether or not that happens now.
And I would suspect that the large number you're seeing increases to the list at this point are probably data driven. The people who have been in the situation where they could have been on the list, we just haven't been able to track it. They're not people that have fallen into homelessness in this period necessarily. Is that accurate?
I think that's in conjunction with the access points for coordinated entry starting to get up and running. At Project Homeless Connect, we were giving out flyers, letting people know that, like kind of spreading the word and doing a bit of marketing, so to speak, for coordinated entry. So I think that's probably part of the influx.
Mr. Train.
Monica, you said something about new dollars coming down, or whoever said it, new dollars coming down in July for housing. Is that the same amount we got last year? Is it declining or what?
That I don't know. I know like we got money last year through Rural PAP at 325, but that was to open up a building, and now the building's full. Some agencies get housing vouchers. Dave Barabee was here. I don't know how that, in the past for Anchorage Community Mental Health, I know that they were, every July they got an influx of funds for housing vouchers. With this new program, I don't know if that's going to continue, that every year they're gonna get more dollars for housing.
So I can track where the dollars are coming from, because I think we may see a change coming from these, so we know what's back there.
Right.
Let's see how that's gonna affect us here on the local level. Thank you.
Our homeless coalition director, and maybe we could even ask Carrie if we could put her on the spot, they could address the primary, continuum of care funds that come in through HUD. And I don't believe there's any changes, although maybe we don't even have a budget yet.
Corinne or I could speak to it. I mean, like, HUD has made announcements about the next round of awards for COC programs, and I think for the most part, programs are going to continue to be funded. There's a few programs that are like an actual voucher program, and others are just sustaining existing like properties. So maybe Corinne could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I was the Continuum of Care, which are the grantees that receive federal funds, had a meeting this week to review what our federal scores were, because our federal scores just came out based on our last year's application. We scored slightly below the median, and there wasn't a lot of ways that we could look at that we could improve our application. Some of it was we lost points on how many rapid rehousing resources we had in the community, and how many permanent supportive housing units we added, and this is all based on data. And we lost points because our unsheltered count went up, not this year, but the year prior. And so the federal application is becoming very, very data driven. We think the funding will generally flatline. We got a project cut this year, but HUD is trimming basically the lowest scoring projects every year, except for the people that are scoring the very highest. So those communities that are scoring the very highest are getting bonus projects and keeping all of their projects, whereas some of our projects are dropping just below the line. So I think there is an active effort by providers to like see, and I think these efforts will see how we can improve our federal score, but we are sort of weak in leveraging funding in certain places in our community to keep our score up. So we don't expect that there's going to be any new units or new vouchers. It's probably going to be the same amount of money, maybe with a slight cut coming this coming year.
Thank you. Mr. Steele.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think this is a great opportunity for us, and a great opportunity for those people who need the services. But I'm hoping that there is a feedback loop on people who get permanent housing a year out, a couple of years out. It helps us to tweak the system as we go forward and keep it up to date as to what the needs are out there. It just it sounds like a well thought out, and hopefully will be a good successful program.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And you mentioned a couple minutes ago that when we get people housed and then we do a new count and we have additional people coming in, do you know where they're coming in from? Are they people that were already living in Anchorage that became homeless, or are they someone that's from another part of the state that moved here?
We did include that question again in the survey. When did you move to Anchorage? And ask for a time frame and how long were you here? And we're still tallying some of that, but it looks like similar. Last time we had like 6 people, 12 people total, and 6 were from other communities. And it seems like it's the same. I think it was in that range again. So it's really a low percentage of people. We were just asking that question. Oh, actually, we asked that question on the total point of 10 survey, right? It was on point of 10. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when the tallies come out, that we'll be able to know that for the whole population.
All right, great. Thank you.
See any other questions? Is that, did we cover everything? Or is there another section?
Oh, that was it.
All right. We are on to, we have member comments. Any members of the committee have any comments? Questions? Concerns? Reflections? Audience participation. Is anybody, Mr. Oliva, I just go to you automatically. How about that?
Well, my concern is there's repercussions to opposing housing first, and you can get labeled, and it can cost you economically. I want to point out Rural Cap put out a big auction bid, $39,000 commission was in the hub zone. Our auction company adjacent to the homeless shelter was awarded to a part-timer outside the district and not in the hub zone. So when you look at this and you start with housing, you start with social services next, and then you try to employ them, I'm on the other end employing 134 W-2s in the past. Last year, I think I'll break 150 for employees. Today I hired 6 from the homeless shelter. They're all out shoveling. They can shovel for me, but they can't shovel their walkway from the bus stop to the shelter. But the other thing is the governor. The governor took all their surplus airplanes, police cars, etc., 11 million in assets, and assigned it to an Alabama website. Makes it real easy, but circulating that are the employees that I hire. And in this proposal to get permanent housing, I'm working on getting the old state site for state surplus, which is 25% unemployment, and make that into a workable situation. Whereas if the surplus assets stay from the city, the state, and then we can expand if it's the Matsu, the borough, the sustainability of employing the homeless relies on it. So hey, you either put me out of business or buy my property or let me employ these people, but don't send the work outside and don't give it to part-timers because I'm right here. Any questions?
I don't see any questions, Ron. Thank you. Any other audience members have any comments? Mr. McGrath.
Yeah, thank you. You're doing a great job in a lot of ways. And go back to where Ruth Moulton, if some of you knew her years and years ago, we talked. She was concerned about warehousing people at these road transits and things. And we've gotten a lot of different organizations now that are going way beyond warehousing. But one thing we're really missing here is communications with the public. Like in Spenard, the Barrett Inn, they were here a couple of months ago and are doing some housing, but you haven't communicated with the public in that area. And at the last Spenard Community Council meeting, there was people that were concerned, and they didn't know what was going on. It isn't that they're opposed, it's just that they want to be in the loop. And sometimes when you put people in the loop, maybe some of them will go volunteer and or give money or whatever. But so often people don't know what's happening instead of just being part of the communication. So I would say somehow get the word out. This is what we're doing. Instead of, what's your name, Devin, does an article every once in a while in the paper, but I think we need more information so that the general public knows what's happening and can engage the system if they want to and help out.
I understand social media is actually a pretty popular thing these days, so and maybe a way to communicate.
Never heard of that. Of course, I'm old.
Any other comments? We do have, in honor of Dave's birthday, we have pizza for everybody, so be sure to stick around and celebrate.
Could we, if you don't mind, Melinda had an update on the fire that happened this morning.
Oh, please.
Could we ask if she could give that to us? Thank you.
So, of course, at approximately 2 a.m. this morning, there was a very tragic fire at the Royal Suite Inn on Minnesota. Many of you are aware of that. And our emergency preparedness team provided us with a situation report and an update on that. At this time, there were approximately, there's 17 individuals that were transported to local hospitals with injuries ranging from mild to severe, and there were 2 fatalities. The Alaska Red Cross is coordinating the assistance for the fire victims, and the Spenard Recreation Center was activated as a temporary shelter for the displaced residents. 20 to 22 residents were transported via our people mover system, which came forward to assist with all of the transportation efforts to the Spenard Rec Center. And so at this time, we are initiating emergency response systems from DHHS, but certainly AFD and our partners with People Mover and our partnership with Red Cross is fully implemented. So I will be distributing the situational reports for your review, and just wanted to update all of you on that situation.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, thanks very much. I had the chance to go to the site this morning, as well as down to Spenard Rec Center. Red Cross was on the scene, and the school district was on the scene. There's kids in that structure who go to Willowcrest, Romig, West. The principal of Willowcrest had done a great job bringing some spare clothes in for the kids, and the school district was getting them to school if they chose to go to school. There was a number of individuals there who told some rather harrowing tales of escaping the building and some of the efforts that they made to actually save young children who were thrown out of windows. So it was a pretty horrific event, but the way the communities come together is just a testament to the first responders, to our ability to respond to these disasters, and to the support, but we always need more.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
What about temporary housing for folks? Is that, the rec center's fine, but is there a need for, and is that happening?
Well, the rec center is set up, and they're anticipating that they'll have folks there for 2 or 3 days as we find different housing for people.
Is the building damaged to such an extent that it will not be habitable?
That building is gone. When I stopped by the scene later on, the firefighters were still engaged. There were hot spots that were still bursting on flames.
See ya. Corinne?
Yeah, so Rural Cap runs Safe Harbor Muldoon. We do have a couple of open units for people that qualify. We did get a call this morning about a really high risk family, and we'll try to be as accommodating as we can to bump families who can meet the qualifications and are going to remain homeless because they don't have resources to open those units to them. And we'll work with the district on that as well.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Ray Jackson.
Thank you. Do we know the cause again?
It's under investigation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Seeing no other questions, we are adjourned.